Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to LIBOR's Wednesday webinar on this beautiful fall day. My name is Mary Ann Monteleone, Vice President of Professional Development, and we have a very special guest here with us today as we round off our month in recognizing Realtor Safety Month, a very, very important topic to our speaker today and certainly to LIBOR. Let me tell you a little bit about David Lagaz, so I don't miss anything. I want to read something to you. David Lagaz, after a successful career as one of New York's finest, Dave retired as a sergeant in 2002 after responding to the 9/11 World Trade Center tragedy and losing his partner. Dave continues his 2 decades of law enforcement experience and 25 years of real estate practice to teach real estate professionals internationally how to reduce their risk of being targeted by a predator. In 2019, as a graduate of the NAR Leadership Academy, Dave petitioned NAR's leadership team to create a Realtor Safety Advisory Committee and was appointed its first chairperson in 2020. He is also education chairperson and a board of director for the Beverly Carter Foundation, whose mission is dedicated to improving agent safety. Dave also co-authored an agent safety book named Safe Selling, a practical guide for preventing crime without sacrificing the sale. He is the 2021 New York State Association of Realtors, or NYSAR, president, and was the 2017 LIBOR president and their Realtor of the Year in 2014. He is no stranger to us. We thank him for being with us. So please welcome our friend Dave Lagaz.
Thank you, Mary Ann, and I apologize to all for that long bio. I had a hard time writing about myself, so I had asked my mother to help me. The funny thing is, I'm not even her favorite. I couldn't imagine what my 2 brothers' bio would look like. So let me share my screen here and we'll get started. I do want to tell you that today you're going to be hearing a lot about predatory behavior and what attracts a predator. And years ago, the real estate industry made a false assumption that crimes against agents were random, opportunistic street crimes. And as a result, they taught about awareness and not about predatory behavior. And we know now from most police reports that crimes committed upon realtors meet all the classic predatory behavior patterns. You'll learn today that a predator's goal is power and control, and they're attracted to agents who show signs of weakness, subservience, and vulnerability. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to remove that from a daily practice. I'm proud to say that NAR also adopted segments of my book that include predatory behavior to help keep the agent safe. So today, you'll learn how to prevent yourself from being targeted by a predator without sacrificing the sale. And in the next hour, we're going to be looking at the criminal behaviors and their mindsets, how to protect yourself by removing the attributes that attract the predator, and those are weakness, subservience, and vulnerability. The importance of following your intuition, situations when you should take a buddy with you, and some best open house practices. If you have any questions or comments along the way, feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A, and it'll be monitored by staff and they'll interrupt me during the presentation. We're going to show you a lot of videos today. These are actual newscasts, and they can be upsetting because they involve realtors who were victims of a crime, and some tell the story, or when they're unable to tell a story, the newscast does. This next video is one that I produced with NAR, where we interviewed 2 realtor victims. And I do have to preface, if you've experienced a trauma or been a victim of an attack in the past, we strongly encourage you to seek assistance and support from your local resources. Watching these videos may be upsetting, and it can trigger a negative, unwanted response, especially if you've been a victim. So feel free to step out for 15, 20 minutes if these videos trigger you. This first one was first presented in a TED-style safety talk that I gave at NAR's Leadership Academy, Leadership Summit in 2021. And we interviewed 2 realtor victims.
Member safety is a matter of your life or your death.
I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be in a situation to where I would have a 9mm held to my head.
It was a day like any other when James Olson, an agent with more than 35 years' experience, set out to meet a blind lead at a vacant property, something he had done countless times before.
I was actually with my wife on the way to an appointment. I had never met this person, and she was sitting on the front porch waiting for me, and I just told my wife to wait in the car. We walked through the living room, the dining room, and the kitchen. Now, I've been in this property a number of times, and it just seemed odd to me that all the doors were closed. So I went to grab the bedroom door, and out came a masked gunman holding a 9mm to my head. He was all dressed in black like a ninja. He had a hoodie on, sunglasses, face mask, black gloves, black everything. Within a couple seconds, another guy dressed the same held a 9mm up against the side of my head. I had my hands up in the air, and he said, "Get down to the floor." So I took his gun, and he hit me in the back of the head. I went falling to my knees. Blood was flowing in my eyes. They're asking me where the money is, and I told them I didn't have any, so they rifled my pockets and pulled my pants down and socks and shoes off, and they wound up making away with my wedding ring, my wallet, and my iPhone. They came back to me and said, "Give us 10 minutes or we're coming back here and killing you." These guys are out there, and if they attack me, more than likely they're going to be going after somebody else. This was a predatory assault. They didn't just randomly pick me, they stalked me.
Jim Olson was surveilled and targeted based on his job as collecting rents as a property manager. They knew what day to lure him into the property that was vacant so he could be robbed at gunpoint. Studies have shown that agent male victims were attacked 30% of the time. And we know with Jim Olson, and he's a big burly man, infantry soldier, never was in fear that something could happen, and he was a victim of a violent robbery. And now, listen to his story, he changes the way he does business. He arrives at a home much earlier than the appointment time and does a circumference of the house to see if there's anything out of place or if there's any broken windows or forced entry.
Kitty Wallace, a managing broker with almost 20 years' experience, has faced off with numerous predators.
One of my most recent experiences was from a gentleman who wanted to see a home. I have a practice that I have them meet me at the office for the first time. This particular gentleman didn't want to meet me at the office, so that did put a red flag up for me.
Working in a rural area with limited cell phone reception, Kitty remained steadfast in her safety protocols, but the caller had a plan of his own.
He was very insistent, and it was, "Can you meet me there in an hour?" And I said, "No, unfortunately, I can schedule an appointment with you. We can sit down and see what your needs are." "No, I want to see this house." And he said, "Okay, then meet me in 2 hours." He just kind of kept moving the time frame for me. And when that escalated and he wouldn't meet me, he ended up calling my office. He was swearing at me, saying that, "That's my job. I need to meet him here. What is my seller going to do when he finds out I won't show him this property," etc. And I just didn't let myself get bullied. I really stood my ground and didn't meet with him at all. I've always kind of just accepted it's part of the job, and that's really not okay. So I reported it to my local association, and they sent an email blast to all the agents. 2 other agents reached out to me, and they had also been approached by this gentleman. Maybe I prevented something bad happening not only to myself, but maybe somebody else as well. I do believe that the intent of some clients is not to buy a house. The intent is to see what they could do if they got me a loan.
Jim and Kitty's harrowing stories display the 2 types of predatory motives: profit and power and control.
There is a misconception that crimes against agents are random opportunistic street crime, and in fact, they're of predatory nature. And by understanding predator behavior and learning that you can remove weakness, subservience, and vulnerability out of your daily practice, you'll be able to keep yourself safe.
I think realtor safety is one of the most important things that any realtor can learn about.
The goal of the Realtor Safety Program is to reduce the number of incidents in our industry so this way you can come home to your family every night. You deserve it and they deserve it.
I think having these protocols in place is definitely the key to saving my life. 99.9% of the time, our job is amazing. It's that 0.01% that's not worth my life.
So we have a high-risk occupation according to the US Department of Labor. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's an average of 20 homicides per year on real estate professionals since 2011. And did you know that there are more real estate professionals killed nationwide each year than NYPD officers? More of us killed nationwide each year than NYPD officers. That's a damaging statistic. And as an officer, I was trained to protect life and property. I had the tools on my belt that would keep me safe. I had a firearm, a baton, pepper spray, a taser, handcuffs, a radio, mace. But as realtors, we don't have those tools. But today I'm going to give you some things that's going to remove the attraction of a predator. Since the kidnapping murder of Beverly Carter in 2014, she was a Little Rock, Arkansas agent. She was shown a property, kidnapped, held for ransom, killed, and then buried, found several days later. NER created an annual member safety report the year after, and they conducted a survey to see and learn what dangers we face every day. So I'm going to go over some of those statistics with you. It shows that 23% of the agents work in fear last year. And based on the membership count of all the realtors nationwide, that's approximately 1.6 million realtors. That's 370,000 realtors last year nationwide worked in fear. That's about a little under 15,000 NYSAR realtors based on the membership of about 65,000. And it's about a little over 7,000 LIBOR realtors based on our membership of about 31,000. So there are many people, 23% actually work in fear when we're doing our showings. When they asked what made them feel unsafe, the survey said the top fear was after receiving a threatening message prior to the appointment, and that was at 33%. And then they felt unsafe, 27% at the showing. But not too far behind was meeting a client for the first time at a secluded property and also at an open house. And you'll learn today that the predator is going to test you to see if you're weak, subservient, or vulnerable. And it often starts with sending a threatening or inappropriate email, a message, or a voicemail or a call. And when you do receive those messages, and I know some of my buyer specialists on my team get those, hey, let's go for a drink after the showing, or I want to marry you, or you're beautiful. What you have to do at that point is bark back at them. Tell them to knock it off, it's not appreciated, and that you're going to notify the police. If you let it go and don't do anything, you're showing that you're weak and vulnerable. They asked, well, where do they feel most unsafe? And it was more common amongst women who worked in suburban and metro urban areas. They asked, well, how many were victims of a crime? Robbery, assault, rape, murder. And it only said that was 2%, but that's 32,000 realtors nationwide, close to 1,300 New York State realtors, and almost 700 LIBOR realtors that were victim of a serious crime. They asked, well, when or where did the crime occur? And residential realtors were more likely to encounter crimes after receiving that inappropriate email, text message, phone call, or voicemail 30% of the time. And 9% of the time it happened during a showing and 4% at an open house. They said, well, how many of us actually meet a new prospective client blindly at a secluded property and 34% actually meet someone blindly for the first time at a vacant property. And you learn today that a predator is going to lure you to a vacant property so you cannot be seen or heard. So here are some actual newscasts that reported on crimes that occurred upon a realtor.
According to detectives, Lewis was caught on surveillance video kidnapping 37-year-old Stefano Barbosa at gunpoint outside a Fort Lauderdale home. Lewis then allegedly forced the victim to make two $500 withdrawals before shooting him.
So this was a kidnapping where they take you to the bank for an ATM. The initial phase of a kidnapping provides the best opportunity to escape. Try to make as much commotion as possible, draw attention to your situation on the street. And then if you're forced to get in the car, try to cause an accident. Grab the steering wheel, do something to cause an accident, because your chances of seriously being injured in the accident are less than the chances of being taken to a secluded location by the kidnapper, where the results aren't often that good.
Douglas County Sheriff's deputies found Sodoro lifeless Tuesday morning. An autopsy determined he was shot to death. We're told he was showing Lorello the property. Though the suspect has no criminal history, he's known in the world of realty for the wrong reasons. Jason Burnstill, a real estate agent, told 6 News Lorello has, quote, a long history of questionable interactions with other agents and describes him as creepy.
So the predator was known in this real estate community for over 10 years as someone who made the agents feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to talk a little about a safety app that LIBOR has as a free member benefit called Real Safe Agent. And it gives you a rating of how other agents felt when they were with that buyer. And you can determine based on that rating whether you should take a buddy with you or not. But this MLS association didn't have an Amber Alert system or safety alert system where he may have decided to take a buddy. Luckily, Long Island Board of Realtors does, and our CEO, Tessa Holtz, created this safety alert system where if you have any suspicious behavior out there, you can notify LIBOR and they'll broadcast a message to the agents. And it was activated several times. And I have 2 examples here. The first was a suspicious couple identified themselves as a wealthy family with children from Charlotte, North Carolina, asking to see only vacant homes that were above $1 million. They were cash buyers and needed to relocate their business quickly. And they chose that price point because they know $1 million property does provide a nice commission. The fact that it's vacant and all cash, they know that you're going to run to that appointment. Predators are always going to use that scenario as they did when they lured Beverly Carter as well. And at the first showing, the second one was at the first showing, a man arrived with his sister, pregnant fiance, and a young boy. At the second showing, he arrived by himself and tried to lure the female realtor into the basement and attic of this home. When this happens, notifications go out through the association to let the agents know in those areas to be on the lookout for this behavior pattern that these predators are using.
Both charged with felony abduction and misdemeanor assault after allegedly attempting to abduct a 54-year-old realtor as she waited to show a home in North Ridgeville. The woman was scheduled to show a home on Homecrest Drive when Helton and Evans allegedly asked her for a business card and then grabbed her and attempted to pull her into an SUV.
We tell our children not to approach strangers in vehicles, but as realtors, we're looking for that next lead. We're looking to create more business. So she did approach the van, and she fought back, and they were trying to abduct her into that van. But if she was by herself, if she wasn't by herself, she probably wouldn't have been targeted. But because she was by herself, she was an easy target for a predator.
She was showing this home to a potential client when he told her there was a leak in the bathroom. As she walked in, he came in behind her, slammed the door shut, and shoved her against the wall, yelling sexually explicit profanities. The victim says that she remained calm, fought back, and made up a story her attacker fell for.
So the predator used the most common way to set the stage to attack. And it's often there's a leak in the bathroom or a leak in the basement. And they're going to try to lure you into rooms that they could attack you, that no one could hear you or see you from the outside. And I'll show you some other ways that they're going to set the stage to attack. So when you hear those words, you'll know that an attack is imminent. But by fighting back, she was able to escape. And research shows that women who physically resisted and in defending themselves reduce the odds of a completed rape and a physical injury. Even if you have no professional martial arts training at all, just the fact that you're fighting back shows that you're not weak or vulnerable or subservient. Though by pleading with a sexual predator, you only feed into their perception that you're weak or vulnerable, and that increases their urges to continue the attack. The story she told the predator was that the sellers were due back on the way home and would have interrupted during the showing.
To some troubling behavior in Hillsborough County, deputies tell us a man is going around looking for female real estate agents who are alone and then inappropriately touching them.
This happens more frequently than we realize, and here's a disturbing fact. 1 in 3 women will be attacked with the intent of sexual assault, and 1 in every 6 women have been victims of attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And these are national statistics, not just realtor statistics. So when we host an open house and we let anyone in unannounced, unidentified, we just make it easy for them to attack us. And unfortunately, due to victim shaming, many females don't report the sexual abuse. So our statistics are probably a little skewed on the low side.
Court documents say Jason Haddad was inside his house alone with the victim. Police say as the two were going room to room, Haddad asked her, quote, what her fetishes were. The victim was, quote, caught off guard and did not respond because she wanted to remain professional. The two continued throughout the home, and according to police, the victim found numerous sex toys, a rope, and handcuffs in one of the rooms. Police say after that discovery is when Haddad sexually assaulted the victim.
So this was a listing appointment. We always think about stranger dangers when we're dealing with buyers, but listing appointments, we think we're safe. We're going into their home. We look up the property records. We see who the owner is. We often have many conversations with them about the home and renovations and recent updates to the property or any motivation why they're selling. So we feel that we're comfortable with them, and we often go on these listing appointments alone. And we wouldn't expect that on a listing appointment that this could happen.
Attack was completely unexpected. She says 34-year-old Holdren showed up like any regular customer Saturday and even took a complete tour of the home.
It makes absolutely no sense, but he came in and he signed in. He gave his name, he told her where he worked, and he told her about his children.
Grant says Holdren left when another client arrived, but he returned later, telling Farrington he had left his phone in the basement.
What changed from the minute he left until he came back, no one will ever know.
That's when Farrington says he attacked her with a crescent wrench, saying he hit her over the head with that wrench up to 12 times.
See, often predators will give their real name and contact information because they're not afraid of getting caught. He initially left because other buyers were coming in at the open house, so he returned at the end of the open house, knowing that there'll be no one else following him in. He didn't come with a weapon. I spoke to the investigator who investigated and arrested Holden on this. He knew there'd be weapons in the house. We always have those butcher block and knives in the kitchen, or that magnetic strip by the stove with all the knives. And in the basement, obviously there's tons of tools there. And that's what he used when he went into the basement. He took a tool and brutally beat Lenore. Luckily, Lenore was a black belt in karate, and she was able to defend herself as she was being struck, and she was able to survive. Now, this one happened at an open house in Encino, California. And you'll notice that the agent is on the stoop because she had uncomfortable feeling with the purchaser, this predator. So she decided to go out to where people could see her in the public. He's holding a bottle of water there because he tried to lure her back in to get a bottle of water, and she said, go get it yourself. And this is what happened when he came back out after the bottled water.
Remember you said...
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, another realtor says she also had an encounter with this same man in February, also at an open house, also in Encino.
Predators looking up at the security camera. Again, they're not afraid to get caught. So just by simply getting their ID or introduce them to others may not prevent you from being attacked. I will tell you the reasons why we should do things like that, but it by itself will not prevent you from being attacked. And this predator was seen lingering around other open houses the previous week and actually visited some open houses that day as well. And depending on his urges and state of mind, and if the agent displays signs of weakness, subservience, or vulnerability, they'll attack. If you show that you're not weak or vulnerable, or you have a buddy with you, then the predator most likely won't attack at that point. I actually interviewed this realtor to be part of that video that I created with NER in the beginning of the presentation here, but she was too traumatized to fly. And NER was going to allow me to fly to California, pick her up and bring her to the offices where we were going to film in Chicago. But she couldn't find it in herself to do it. She's in therapy, she's on medication. She rarely works in real estate now, only works by referral and takes a broker with her on all her appointments. You can imagine how damaging being a victim of a crime is, especially in a passion job that we love so much, and we're not expecting to be a victim.
Near this model home in Hanover, Maryland. Sales representative Stephen Wilson was shot to death Wednesday evening at about 5 p.m. His cell phone and laptop were stolen.
Another male victim, another deadly outcome. National statistics show that 30% of agent victims were men. The next video is rather graphic. It's the surveillance video of that model home where the predator approached with what appears to be a shotgun just prior to killing Steve Wilson. So you see he tried to enter the rear or the side of the house, which was locked. But when you do an open house, do you open up all the doors? Do you keep them all locked? Unfortunately, the predator did make his way in through the front of the door and did immediately shoot and kill agent Steve Wilson.
We got into the master bedroom and he pulled a knife out. And I could not believe it was happening.
He showed the knife and a can of bear spray.
He asked me to take off my ring and to get in the closet.
Donna says she felt her life was in danger.
I have a license to conceal carry and I had a firearm, and I drew my weapon. As I drew my firearm and he saw that I had that, he doused me with bear spray. So at that point I could not see, barely see, and my skin was burning, my eyes were on fire. And so I fired.
So by having a firearm on her person that day that she was able to access, it saved her life. As we know, it's very difficult to obtain a concealed carry permit in New York, especially in New York City. I know the laws are starting to change and loosen up right now, but there's a big battle over it. But NAR did ask realtors, did they carry a weapon in the survey? And 51% carried a weapon, more than half. And the trend is increasing over the years where agents are now carrying weapons. When I teach across the country, generally 75% of the students in my class carry a firearm when they do showings. The most common self-defense weapon carried was pepper spray and firearm, where females, 26% of them carried pepper spray and 13% carried firearms. So what is NAL's policy on self-defense weapons? Well, actually, they don't have a position other than you should know your state laws on weapons and know that brokerages, building owners, and sellers could prevent you from entering with a weapon. And speaking as an NYPD officer, if you are licensed to conceal carry, you should regularly practice at the range. As an officer, we are required to qualify twice a year at the shooting range, and we were continually trained on gun retention. So realtor safety is not a new phenomenon. In 1967, there was an episode of Dragnet that showcased a missing realtor, and we know that Dragnet showcased crimes that were true and changed their names to protect the innocent. I know many millennials in the audience probably doesn't know what Dragnet was, but it was a really good crime drama show that actually showed real cases and how they were solved. But in 1967, there were attacks on realtors, even back then.
It was warm in Los Angeles. We were working the day watch out of homicide. The boss is Captain Brown. My partner's Bill Gannon. My name's Friday. Mrs. Lily Burnham, a real estate broker, had been reported missing. The preliminary investigation indicated a strong possibility of foul play.
So Mrs. Lily Berman was found murdered in the home she had shown. Officer Gannon and Sergeant Friday found her car, found the day planner in the car, traced her steps, and later apprehended the predator who was convicted of a first-degree murder. But 1967, there was a concern for our safety. So allow me to spend a couple minutes on the Beverly Carter story, especially this time of year in Realtor Safety Month. On September 30th, 2014, which is a couple of days from the anniversary, Beverly Carter was found dead in a shallow grave after showing a home on September 26th. And I had a pleasure to meet Carl Carter Jr. and Beverly's broker about 1 year after Beverly's murder, as they were on a news documentary show in Manhattan. And NER had asked me to be the safety expert on the show to provide some tips during the end of that segment. And when Carl founded the Beverly Carter Foundation, he asked me to be the board director, and now I'm their educational director. But here's Carl telling a story about his sweet mom who got kidnapped and murdered.
Beverly Carter was my sweet mom. She was an executive broker and a top producing real estate professional from the North Little Rock, Arkansas area. While doing the work that my mom loved so much, she was kidnapped and murdered in the fall of 2014. A couple of weeks before that showing that took my mom from me, my mom began hearing from a couple. Their story was that they were out-of-state buyers. They were relocating due to work, cash buyers, and my mom was hearing from them from phone calls, text, and emails. Their phone number matched that of an out-of-state buyer. Their email address matched the fictitious names that they had given her. But my mom had no idea that these people were not who they said they were. She had no idea of their intentions to kidnap her, to hold her for ransom, and to take her perceived wealth. The husband of this couple that took my mom said, when he was questioned, why Beverly? He said, because she was a rich broker that worked alone. Just being in the profession, marketing herself as the professional that she was, made her a target. As my mom worked with this couple and learned more about how she could best serve them, she reached out to other agents within her agency to get them to be on the lookout for properties that might be of interest to this couple. My mom talked about this couple and their needs to my dad. And so many people were aware that Mom was working with these clients. However, something happened when the couple reached out and they requested to see a specific property. A property that my mom knew was vacant and was in a bit of disarray. A property that my mom knew probably wouldn't be what they were looking for. We know that it raised a red flag with my mom because my mom did a great thing. And that's that she made up a company policy in the moment, and she said to them, I'm so sorry, but company policy prohibits me from working alone in a rural area. What my mom didn't anticipate was that the husband handed the phone to his wife, and the wife said, hey girl, I'm going to be joining the two of you at this property. Will your company be okay for the three of us to be there during this showing? My mom, being so sweet and so professional, did as many of us would. She agreed to show them this property. A property that I'll add was known to be in a safe area. This was a common place for my mom. It's a lakefront property. Just a few doors down from this home is where the pastor of my mother's church lived. A community known for its safe community feel, where people are known to not even lock their doors. So my mom agreed to meet this couple and show them this property. It's 6 p.m. Keep in mind, my mom had never met them in a public place prior to this. My mom had no idea that on the other end of this transaction, the husband was a 7-time felon. And so my mom got to that property early that day, after calling my dad and saying that she was going to show that specific property, and Dad knew exactly where she'd be. 6 p.m. came, and a black car pulls up in the driveway, and it's the husband. And the husband starts in with all these excuses about how he's sorry that the wife will not be able to join them, that she got caught up at work. And sure enough, just kind of in tandem with those excuses, my mom's phone starts receiving text messages from the wife with the apologies. They asked my mom to proceed with showing the property that day, and asked my mom that while she toured the home with the husband, if she would just use her cell phone to take property photos to send to the wife. So it could be as though she was on the showing, at least digitally. And so my mom agreed to show the property. And really one of the toughest things I've ever seen is at the conclusion of the trial, we received my mother's cell phone back, and the last 10 photos on the camera roll were of the interior of this home. And my mom was showing property that day as she was texting them to the wife and answering questions about the property. But my mom had no idea that on the second floor, one of the bedrooms, as she turned from taking a photograph, that she would be met with a roll of tape just like this one and a taser in her side. The bad guy has been very proud to admit that the last words that my mother heard in her safety were, "You're about to have a very bad day." That bad guy tased my mom. He taped her hands behind her back. He taped her ankles together. He ran this tape entirely around her head over her eyes and entirely around her head over her mouth. He went outside and got in his car and backed his car up to the house and opened the trunk and placed my mom in the trunk of that car. He took my mom to a remote area and made her do the first of what would be a series of ransom recordings. These were intended to get my dad to pay a hefty ransom so that these bad guys would never have to work again. After having my mom record that ransom recording, he took my mom to their home, to the bad guy's home, and locked her in their master bathroom. It was at that point that this bad guy thought about this ransom plan and how they would get these funds from my father. And their original plan was that they would use this rich broker's purse and have this husband push all of this money to the cards within the purse. But in that moment, they found a major flaw in their plan. As a safety precaution, my mom never showed property with her purse on her shoulder. She had left it locked in her car. So in his haste to kidnap my sweet mom and to put her in the trunk of his car, he forgot the purse. that night, he left my mom at his home being guarded by the wife of this couple. And he came back to get the purse, and he found that my entire family was there. Law enforcement was there. And as with so many criminals, they think that they have the best and the brightest plan and they won't get caught. And then they see blue lights and they make crazy decisions. And in the case of my sweet mom, they decided to end my mother's life when they realized that their plan wouldn't work. I carry with me my mother's name badge. This is the badge that she was wearing that day whenever she was showing property. It's a really harsh reality and reminder that these people perceived her not as the precious person that she was, but as a vehicle for money. And whenever they couldn't get what they wanted, they took this precious person, they broke it, and they discarded it. My mother's body was found buried in a shallow grave after days and days of searching. We're fortunate that in my mother's case, there was at least some justice, and that the people that took her are in prison now. But our family has obviously a huge hole that can't be filled from my precious mom. And so in the aftermath of losing her, we've recognized what can happen within this industry and the things that we need to do to keep a similar tragedy from ever happening again. And so in response to losing my precious mom, we founded a nonprofit in her name. It's called the Beverly Carter Foundation. And it exists solely for safety awareness, training, victim advocacy, all for this industry. The industry that my mom loved so much, that she gave so much to, but also now an industry that can learn from my sweet mom and keep this from happening to other people. We welcome you to come to our website, check out our resources, rally with us to help keep others safe. Our web address is beverlycarterfoundation.org.
Carl Carter Jr. is a strong man. He wasn't in real estate at the time when he lost his mom. He got his license and started this crusade to keep us safe. And I'm blessed to have known him and to be part of this foundation that goes around the country teaching realtors how to be safe. I do not collect any money for speaking or anything from the book that I co-authored. Matter of fact, my speaking fee today is donated to the Beverly Carter Foundation by the Long Island Board of Realtors.
When asked why he chose to rob and murder real estate agent Beverly Carter, her killer answered, because she was a rich broker working alone. If you were to walk through a local mall and ask 100 women if they would meet a strange man at an empty property, most would say no. For a real estate agent, that's part of the job description.
That is what we do every day. You wouldn't tell your son or daughter to meet a stranger at a vacant home for a job interview, and we do that. We may lock our doors on our homes, but we allow every stranger unidentified and unannounced to enter an open house. In fact, we post on social media that we're going to be by ourselves for 2 hours in a home, and we give the address and a picture of ourselves. That attracts the predator. So the survey asks, well, how many of us show a vacant home that has poor or no cell phone coverage? And 43% have shown vacant homes in areas with no phone or poor cell phone coverage in the last 12 months. And obviously, 34% of them felt unsafe because you're unable to access any safety app or notify any family or friends that you might be in danger or call 911. In preparing for my co-authored safety book, we hired the University of Texas at Austin to conduct a research project on the behavioral differences between a predator and a thief. And it was assumed that crimes against agents were similar to random opportunistic street crimes, but with a rare exception, crimes against agents meet all the predatory behavior patterns. And as an agent, it's important to have an understanding of the primary types of criminals you're likely to experience, as well as their criminal pathologies and patterns. So let me review this chart. For a predator, their motive is power and control. For a thief, it's just profit. The crime a predator is going to commit is assault, rape, and murder. The crime a thief is going to commit is either burglarize from the home or steal property from you. To a predator, there's a huge emotional component to every stage leading up and the attack. To a thief, there's no emotional component at all. What attracts a predator, as you heard me say this several times, weakness, subservience, and vulnerability. What attracts a thief is the valuables or the ease of taking the valuables or that perceived wealth that you may have as a realtor. The goal of a predator is to isolate you so you cannot be seen or heard when you're attacked. The goal of a thief is to be isolated so you cannot see them steal the property, and they're going to try to distract you so they can take that property. To a predator, they're filling an emotional void, and that's why they do this attack upon us. To a thief, it's just purely potential risk versus potential gain. So here's the profit motive timeline. And although it's less complicated and most certainly less emotional, crimes with a profit motive still have a specific process. So first, they come up with why they need to steal the property. And basically, it's generally due to an addiction, unfortunately, and they have a financial need to probably support that addiction. The target may be you or the property. If you're the primary target, it's possible that you were chosen at random. However, it's more likely the predator chose you specifically because he feels that you'll be carrying cash or expensive jewelry. If the property is a target, you're merely just a catalyst at random to open the door and let him in. Depending on the severity of the crime, there may be very little planning, such as a simple robbery of the items on your person or taking some easily hidden items from the home. Though it can be very complex, like we saw with Beverly Carter with a kidnapping for ransom, or even taking a key out of the kitchen double locked door or unlocking a window so they could come back at another time to commit a burglary. And the execution, if the thief is there to steal some items from the home, they're going to attempt to separate you, and they probably work with pairs. And they may case the home for a future burglary as well. So here are some thief behaviors. The first is I call a split play. So you're a male realtor, you're hosting an open house by yourself, a husband and wife comes in, posing as buyers. The wife starts flirting with the male realtor to get his attention, while her husband goes around stealing property from the home. If you're a female realtor, the female buyer starts complaining about a fight she just had with her husband outside, hoping to engage you in a conversation and distract you while her partner goes around stealing. Then there's what I call the dust check. And I included this in the book because this actually happened at an open house years ago when I was hosting. So a buyer comes in and they're in the master bedroom and they take their finger and they run their finger along the dresser and they look for dust. Then they go to the headboard, run their finger and look for dust. Now they move over to the windows, that double hung window right in the middle, right on that middle ledge, and they run their finger and look for dust. And what I noticed the predator did right there was to unlock the window. He opened that latch by checking for dust. I noticed it, physically ushered him out of the house. Police end up arresting him for attempted burglary. I did collect his ID, wrote down his information when he did enter. But again, people aren't afraid about giving their real identity. And if they come in and they're more concerned with the who could see in from the outside, something I call the windows and doors gaze. They're not overly impressed by the beautiful chef stainless steel kitchen and granite marble countertops or beautiful hardwood floors. And they're more concerned to see who could see in from the outside. Just know that he may be planning to do something in that home. And if they ask about dogs, alarms, or cameras, those are red flag signs that something may be up. So now here's a timeline of a predatory crime. And we know a predator's motive is power and control, and there's that huge emotional component to their crime and all the activities leading up to it. It's kind of like an obsessive compulsive cycle where they make their decisions to fill that emotional need, and they get a high off of each cycle of that stage. It's almost like being a binge alcoholic where getting the high is what's the most important. They'll do anything to achieve that high. So here are some common progression of the precursor, or what we call hunting behaviors. First, the crime is going to begin when the predator first notices the agent. And it's typically through your personal photographs on how you present yourself on your websites. And avoiding certain types of smiles and what you wear can reduce the risk of being targeted by a predator. And I'll show you how to take a photo of yourself for marketing purposes. Then they're going to focus their behavior on you. And this is the research stage where they're going to go to your website and social media, and they're going to see what marketing messages you have out there and how you display those marketing messages. And I'm going to show you some ways how you could script your stuff a little different. And then this is the most scariest part, where the predator is going to insert elements of your life into their life. And they're doing this stalking you remotely. They're not making contact with you. But if someone's going to stalk me remotely, they're going to look on my social media. They're going to see I'm an avid fisherman. I love to cook what I catch, and I prepare great meals with some really fine wines. To a predator in his fantasy stage, he's on my boat and I'm baiting his hook. He's in my kitchen chopping vegetables, and he's at my dining room table and I'm pouring him a glass of wine as we sit down to eat. And this is how weird the predator is with this fantasy. And typically it involves no contact, and they focus on several agents simultaneously at one time and without us even knowing it. Matter of fact, here's something very weird and creepy about stalking and fantasy. There was an agent showing a neighbor's home that was for sale, and right next door was this shrine to female agents in the community on the shed and on the fence. And we know when we watch these crime dramas that these predators will create a shrine to people they're going to attack and then people they have attacked. Luckily, the agent did see these pictures on the neighbor's property that was for sale and called 911. Police responded. He was an emotionally disturbed man, and luckily he had not committed any crimes yet, and he had gotten help. They notified his family, and he was institutionalized. Then they're going to plan the meeting, and at some point, the fantasy and stalking no longer provide the high. They're going to plan a meeting, more likely a showing at a vacant home, so you cannot be seen or heard. Then they're going to execute the plan. And the first step in executing the plan will be to arrange a meeting by calling and asking you to show them a home, most likely that vacant home. And this is your first opportunity to assess the risk of the prospect and to show your strength. And I'm going to give you some scripts on how to have a good conversation with a incoming prospect that won't alert or scare away a true prospect, but it will deter a predator. Then they're going to meet you, and the predator may be a no-show depending on their state of mind or their comfort level with their urges. So if you ever were meeting a blind person, a prospect blindly at a showing, and you never met them before, and they didn't show up, and then you try to follow up and they fell off the face of the earth, most likely they could have been a predator who decided They didn't have the urge that day to commit the crime against you. And just know that dominant agents or agents who bring a buddy or agents who don't put themselves in isolating situations may cause the predator to move on to the next target. And predators will meet with multiple agents prior to making the attack, and that's called victim shopping. And we saw an example at the open house in Encino, California. That predator was seen the week before at several open houses, and even that day. Then they're going to set the stage to attack. They're going to try to find a way to isolate you. It cannot be seen or heard. And I'm going to go over 3 ways they could do that. Then, just prior to them attacking, you're going to see displayed signs of increased adrenaline. Their gait may increase. They may get into your space, making you feel uncomfortable. Their speech may change. They may start to sweat or have some bulging veins. And by understanding those signs, an agent can exit before the attack occurs, as opposed to trying to escape during the attack. So if you see any of these signs that are progressing, that's your notice to get out of that home. So allow me here to explain anatomy of a crime. This is criminology 101. You need to have a motive, which is a reason, means, which is an ability, and opportunity, which is a chance to commit the crime. And I put it on a 3-legged stool because if you remove one of those, the crime will not occur and you will not be a victim. And we know that the predator's motive is power control, and they will try to isolate you so they can attack. And they're attracted to signs of weakness, subservience, and vulnerability, and they'll victim shop until they find one. So we really can't do anything about the motive, but we can remove the ability or the chance for them to commit the crime. So let's talk about removing the means. So I call it smart marketing. Don't share personal information about yourself. For years, and I used to do this too, agents would share personal information about themselves. This is a great neighborhood. I live around the corner in that brick house. Our kids go to this school and we go to this house of worship, and we're on the soccer field on Saturdays with the soccer team. Now you just gave a predator how they could stalk and attack you and your family. And I added this because leading up to some of the attacks, agents recall seeing a predator stalking them. And I interviewed one of the agents who had this happen when I was preparing for the book. And she had a showing, showed them the neighborhood. It was actually right around the corner from her house, told her all the things she liked about the neighborhood. And then next Saturday morning, he's there in his car stalking her as she picks up her kids. The next time they scheduled an appointment, it was for a vacant property and she was attacked. So we have to be careful about sharing personal information about ourselves. And then your personal photos can track the predator for both power motive and profit motive. And there's Beverly Carter there, a beautiful woman. She's wearing what looks to be an expensive set of pearls. She had what Aaron Lewis, a predator, said, a perceived wealth. But you can see in her smile, it's a very nice smile, but it may not be a professional smile. And I'll show you the differences. You know, to a predator, it's kind of a provocative photography. And I know years ago, women used to go do the glamour shots before getting the photos done. But there are certain ways to take a photo. And you'll see in the green box versus the red box. And the predator is going to initially focus and start with your image that you have on your marketing. And typically, an agent's headshot falls into 2 types: a personal smile, the one on the right, and a professional smile, the one on the left. And a personal, intimate smile presents a slight head tilt, has a smile that one would expect when someone says to them that they love them. A personal or intimate smile is more likely to attract the attention of a predator. Conversely, the head of a professional smile is straight, and it'll make the agent look less attractive to a predator because it projects power, confidence, authority, and it creates boundaries, where the one on the right really doesn't. And due to the predator's predictive behavior, it's best to follow some of these photo guidelines. Try to avoid full body photos. Wherever possible, use photos that are right at or above the shoulders. If you're going to take pictures of the upper body, be professional. Wear a shirt that goes no lower than the top of the breastbone. Avoid wearing anything form-fitting. Wear professional colors. Wear a jacket if possible. Your makeup should be natural and understated. Jewelry should be minimal. Maybe a wedding band instead of a wedding ring. So now here's a photo of a Manhattan agent on Instagram advertising about this great deal, actually in the hot tub that she sold the unit in. Obviously, this is an appropriate way to market yourself to anyone, let alone a predator. I actually reached out to this agent and left her a voicemail, but her Instagram post still remains. So your marketing language. Here's another way you can remove the means and remove weakness, subservience, and vulnerability. The words we use in our marketing messages have connotations. They have an emotional value over and above their literal meaning. And we know that predators are attracted to that weakness, subservience, and vulnerability. So it's essential to select words that convey power, control, knowledge, and authority to reduce the attraction of a predator. So here's two examples. An authoritative example is, I have the experience to handle the entire real estate process. The subservient example is, I'm here to serve all your real estate needs. The first statement suggests confidence, authority, and power. The authoritative language may also attract legitimate prospects and detract predators by not feeding into their stalking high. Though the second statement implies servitude, very suggestive to a predator. I'm here to serve all your needs. Then on the initial call, when you're replying to their inquiry, by using property information, a polite but firm professional demeanor, and setting expectations, you'll be able to work with legitimate clients and customers while deterring a predator as you take back power and control. And here's a way to do it with a sample script. Thank you for inquiring about 123 Main Street. It's one of our most popular listings. This home has plenty of windows accenting the natural sunlight. So to a predator, what do you just tell them? Well, it's a popular listing. Other agents and buyers may be there. And people could see it from the outside because you have plenty of windows with natural sunlight. So just by stating that may deter the predator from choosing that location or you to attack. Then you're going to reestablish power and control. We know the motive of a predator is power and control. So you're going to say, instead of meeting at 5 p.m., we will meet at 5:30. Even though you know the property's vacant, there's a lockbox, the seller's available, you're available, the buyer's available. By resetting the time and reframing it, you're taking away power and control. You're reestablishing that into your power. And then you're going to set expectations. We'll be spending no more than 15 minutes at the property as the sellers are due to return at 5:45. We know from that newscast early on that in addition to fighting back, the story she told the predator was that the sellers were due to return home. To a normal prospect, this is a normal conversation, but to a predator, you establish 3 different items that's going to remove weakness, subservience, and vulnerability. You may not be targeted for an attack. The next thing is I call active listening. Years ago, NAR used to say, well, meet the prospect in the office, do a buyer consultation with them, introduce them to others, take a copy of their driver's license, meet them at a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks so people could see who they are, get them on camera. But that alone is not going to prevent a predator from attacking you because you know who he is. We saw in these newscasts that they gave their real identity and information about themselves and still committed the attack. But by meeting them previously and not blindly at an appointment, it allows you an opportunity to be an active listener. See if you have an uncomfortable feeling being around them. Are they saying anything strange that may decide for you to take a buddy with you? Are you feeling anything that makes you feel uncomfortable that you should decide to take a buddy with you? Or maybe not going on the appointment alone. But if you meet them blindly for the first time at a vacant property, most of the time it's too late to back out of being attacked. And then at the showing, I call having something called an empowered greeting. I'll get there early. I'll stand on the porch step and reach down to greet them. And psychologically, to a predator, you're not appearing weak or vulnerable as they're forced to look up at you. And then have a good handshake. We know it's a universal sign of strength and assuredness, which will again remove any perception of being weak or vulnerable. Maybe if you're still COVID adverse and in lieu of a handshake, a strong head nod with good eye contact will probably serve the same purpose. Now, let's go over a couple of ways to remove the opportunity. Again, you remove one of the three, the crime doesn't occur. So I show a lot in doorman buildings, both in Queens and in Manhattan. And what I do is I'll get there 15 minutes before my appointment, and I'll tell the doorman, when I come in with my buyer, ask for our IDs. Make sure that we arrive together and leave together. To a predator, this will disrupt their fantasy plan and their fantasy and their plan, thinking that they could lure you into an apartment and then walk out and leave you there for dead or injured. And when you're showing in a vertical building, an apartment building, leave the apartment door open. God forbid you need to call for help. Every doorman building that I show, they've all adopted this policy of taking the IDs from the agents and their buyers, even after my showings, because they love the fact of keeping everybody safe. NAR used to say, always bring a buddy. We know always means never, but let me give you 4 absolutes when you should bring a buddy with you. The first is when the property is vacant, as a predator has selected that property, so you can be isolated and not heard. And we saw from the newscast, we heard from Beverly Carter's son. These are all things that predators do, is to lure you to a vacant property. If the property has poor cell phone coverage for the obvious reasons, you'll be unable to access any safety app or call for help. If you have that uncomfortable feeling prior to the appointment, as many realtors had that feeling prior to being attacked. I interviewed several realtors for the book, and they all had that feeling, and they wish they would have acknowledged and not rationalized that feeling. Matter of fact, Beverly Carter had that feeling prior to the appointment and at the showing. And then if you haven't closed a deal in a while, as you may be too eager to make that deal and ignore that voice inside your head that something may be wrong. So 4 absolutes when to bring a buddy with you, and that buddy doesn't have to be licensed. It could be a friend, a neighbor, a relative. When the property is vacant, poor cell phone coverage, uncomfortable feeling prior to the appointment, and if you haven't closed a deal in a while. And then let me talk a little about lockbox safety. Showing agents, please arrive early before your appointment to access the box so you don't have your back to the prospect. Listing agents, please place the lock boxes in plain sight on the front door or the railing. Avoid side doors or rear doors. We know a predator wants to isolate you so you cannot be seen or heard. When there's a lockbox on the side or the rear of the house, you make it easy for the predator to attack. And then avoid placing them on utility meters. I know the utility companies hate that. But last year, and more importantly, another reason why I talk about lockbox safety is, unfortunately, there was a Black Michigan realtor, Eric Brown, where his Black customer and his 15-year-old son was stopped at gunpoint and handcuffed while accessing a lockbox during a showing of a home. And the neighbor's implicit bias was triggered, and they called the police. And I've spoken to numerous agents of color across the country who've had similar experiences when accessing a lockbox. And especially when they're located not in plain sight, it does create a problem, not only for all agents, but especially those of color. So let's try to do our part and keep all our agents safe by keeping a lockbox in the front of the house. So here are the 3 most common ways a predator will set the stage to attack you. And when you hear these words, just know an attack is imminent.
Yeah, I think there's a leak over here. Can we take a look?
It happens that fast where they distract you and strike you. And it could also happen in the basement. I don't show bathrooms, I don't show basements or attics. I'll stay on the landing. The next one is the lookup attack. It's the same concept where you distract and strike, but notice subconsciously, when you're looking up, you lean into the person talking.
What's that?
I don't see.
And right there for an imminent strike. The next one is at the landing, but it could also happen at the stairs or in the doorway. And you'll notice his hands during as he enters the room.
Here can be used as either a bedroom or an.
So she's doing something good here. She's directing him, not leading him. But her gait doesn't automatically stop as he approached the door and slowed down. But when you see that predators put his hands up on the door jamb, just know at that point, you may be walking into a punch. And this could also happen at the top of the stairs landing, where as you approach the top of the stairs, you could be pushed down or kicked down. And if anything, COVID taught us about social distancing, try to maintain 6 feet as you're escorting your buyer through the home. And never show your back to them, direct them, don't lead them. So the survey asks, what about open houses? Well, 42% host an open house alone last year, which was down from 51%. So maybe the messaging is working. And those who did host an open house alone, 18 felt unsafe. So here are some best practices. So in order for my team to have the privilege of working in an open house, they must door knock. And this was pre-COVID times, but they would door knock and say that, give their name and the company they're with, and they would just drop them by to let you know about an open house down the block. They'd give the address, to give the price, and they would invite the neighbors for private viewing between 12 and 1 with the seller's permission, prior to the public open house of 1 to 3. And we would send just listed cards with that information as well. And the reason why we do that is several reasons. One, we want to have a lead generation conversation with the neighbors. We know the neighbors always curious about how their home compares. And we know when one goes on the market, generally a second one does on the block. So this allows you to have that conversation because you know anyone who came between 12 and 1 were personally invited. And then it also lets the neighbors know to keep an eye and an ear out for you because you know the open house is open from 1 to 3. And then don't host the open house alone. What generally I do is I'll have my wife or myself with the buyer specialist and a loan officer. We'll try to plan our escape routes. I'd like to have all my doors locked around me. Just know that if you plan to escape through a yard, some of the yards, especially in Queens, have locked gates. Just make sure the gate is unlocked if that's what you prefer to go out that way. And then control the traffic. One family in at a time, one comes out. Here's an example, pre-COVID, 30 degrees out, 6 inches of snow, and we're hosting an open house. Does several things. One, it keeps the house safe and the agents inside the house safe. 2, it creates buyer urgency because they see other buyers interested in the property. And 3, the neighbors keep on looking outside to see what's going on, and they think you're the best realtor because every time they look, there's a bunch of people out there. But more importantly, you're keeping yourself safe by controlling the traffic. And then I ask for their ID, and I have that sign, please have your ID ready on the door. And the reason why I ask their ID is not because I don't think they're going to attack me because I got their information, but because I'm not showing that I'm weak or vulnerable because I'm asking them to do an act on my behalf. So just the fact that they're handing me the license and I'm writing down their name shows that I'm not weak, subservient, or vulnerable. And then, like I said, direct them, don't lead them, never expose your back, avoid basements, bathrooms, garages, attics, or small rooms. And then if you are going to host an open house by yourself, have periodic check-ins. Maybe have someone drop you off and pick you up. If you're by yourself, have them call you every half hour, every 15 minutes, make sure you're okay. And then at the end of the open house, make sure everybody's out of the house. I was hosting an open house not too long ago, and I teach this stuff. My buyer area specialist picked up her signs at 3 o'clock. At 5 to 3, my loan officer left. So now I'm locking up the house by myself, and out jumps a man out of the second floor bathroom. And if he was there to attack me, he could have attacked me because no one else was coming because it was after 3 o'clock. And even I lost track of who was in the house. But just know that the most dangerous time is at the end of the open house. That's why that predator came back after going to the open house, knowing that no one's going to come at the end. So when you're locking up an open house and you have a straggler come by saying, "Hey, sorry I'm late, I hit some traffic, can I see the property?" Don't reopen that property to let them in, because if it's a predator, they know that no one else is coming and now they have you alone. So what if I told you there was a tool that could prevent you from being victimized? It would issue a warning that you're about to make a dangerous mistake. It's always on, doesn't require any batteries. The tool is free, and you already possess that tool. You want to know what that is, right? Well, that's that voice inside your head, that gut feeling, that sixth sense, that hair on the back of your neck, that intuition that something may be wrong. And many agents who are victims of a crime recall having that feeling that they ignored or rationalized. And some even experienced that strange feeling prior to the appointment. And during their communications or the buyer consultation, they regret not listening to their instincts. So people say, "Dave, what about background checks? We know Beverly Carter's murderer was a 7-time felon." So yeah, there are some apps out there that do check backgrounds, but just know that there's a 30% error rate. 70% of the predators don't even have a felony conviction. The database may only contain about 13% of the convictions, because this isn't the commercial. This is a commercial database. It's not the one that your local police, FBI, or NYPD uses. And know that habitual and serial rapists will attack 11 times before even being arrested. So by doing a background check and nothing pops, you may think that you're safe, but still do it as an added feature, but still remember to remove weakness, subservience, and vulnerability out of your daily practice. So before we finish today, I have just one more topic I want to touch on, and that's staying safe at home. As an NYPD sergeant, one of my assignments were to supervise a domestic violence unit in numerous Manhattan developments. And after learning about a realtor who was killed by a husband in a double suicide a few years ago, it sparked my desire to spend a few minutes on domestic violence. And with the majority of us still working from home, already difficult situations can quickly escalate and create increased danger. And here's a sad statistic: nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by their partner, which is more than 10 million men and women each year. And murders increased 20% during 2014 and 2017. So if you know anyone who's a victim of domestic violence, there are some resources out there. The hotline.org is an online chat where you can do silently from the home, or you can reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. We all deserve to be safe at work and at home. LIBOR does have some safety resources for you. Actually, it shows that my class is being advertised here today, which is really cool. But lower down is that safety app information. So there's the app that we spoke of. There's also a place there to activate that safety alert network, and that's at lirealtor.com/safety. NISAR also has a safety page. When I was president last year, I had them create this. There are 3-minute videos each month I prepared last year, along with infographics. The video that I showed in the beginning of the presentation can also be found here. And you could show those at your office meeting. And I would hope that maybe at each office meeting at your brokerage, you could spend maybe 5 minutes talking about realtor safety, not only in this month of September, but all year round. And NAR also has some tools, nar.realtor/safety. And lastly, you could download my free ebook. Again, I don't make any money on any of the sales. It's a free book, safesellingbook.com. And it'll just describe in detail stuff that I touched on today. It's a quick read. All right, well, thank you. And let's go to the chat. Is there anything in the chat? Any comments or questions? I see one here. If you're asking for ID, make sure it's your office SOP. That's a good point. It could be your office SOP, or it could be your seller's request. Either way, you should have something in writing and should do it equally across the board, so there's no concern about implicit bias or discriminatory practices. Do we have anything else here, Ethan or Marianne?
It looks like that's about it. So I think if no one has any other questions, we can end it there. Oh, hold on. Yep. Yeah,
Great.
looks like we're all set. Thanks, David.
My pleasure. There was a question here about as a required CE course. We do have CE credit offered for these on other days. Your new licensing, New York State Association of Realtors were able to get Department of State to include 1 hour of realtor safety in your new licensing, but we should try to do it as a mandatory CE approval for renewal again. I agree.
Sounds good. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
There was a question here about office SOP. So something that came out from the Newsday investigation and Department of State and legislatures from the Senate hearings is that an office has to have a standard operating procedure on whether they're going to only take buyers out with pre-approvals or if they're only going to take buyers out to show an ID. So your broker has to come up with an office policy that everybody has to follow unless it's overridden by something in writing by your seller. Question is, if you had suspicious emails or calls recently, how do we notify other realtors? lirealtor.com/safety. There was a thing there to access the safety alert system, and the association will notify the agents. If there's no other questions, thank you so much for the opportunity, and please be safe out there.
Good. Everyone have a good day, and thanks for doing this, David.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.